also somewhat know our next panelists. In my time as a reporter at the press and later as a magazine editor, I interviewed all three of these people. So I would like to welcome our former mayors, Lianne Dalziel, Vicki and Garry Moore.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Are you starting, Garry?
Will I start? Okay. Welcome from Sydney.
Just remember to finish.
What's that?
Just remember to finish.
Yeah. Yes, I one of the things that I think the role of a mayor, a fundamental role of a mayor, is to be a collaborator, to try and bring parties together who may not necessarily automatically get together. It's really important around the council table that it's important to note that it's one of the biggest boards in the city and you have no say over who your board members are. That's all the public's opportunity. And you often end up with some deadheads, which is that's how Vicki ended up with me. But one of the things I think that Christchurch has done and often not been acknowledged for is actually leading the way in all sorts of areas. The media tend to focus on the North Island and less on the South Island. And I know in my time and when Vicki was mayor, we did a lot of dragging the South Island together and making sure that we're all talking together. So we did all sorts of things. One of the things we did in my time was the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, which I'd come from the employment scene. And in the finish, it started in Christchurch. And in the finish, there was every council bar Whanganui and the Chatham Islands that were members. And so it's been very successful and is still operating. And that's the sort of on the ground involvement that I think is really important. So over to you, Vicki and Lianne.
I think the thing I learnt as mayor, because we were going to try and tell people what we learnt as mayor so they didn't have to go through the process. One of the things I learnt as mayor was that the city is absolutely full of just amazing people. And I think it's very funny that Christchurch has some reputation somewhere for being a conservative city, because I just did not see that at all. Like totally the opposite. And one of the other things I like about Christchurch is that there's a sort of third city total disrespect for authority, which I really enjoy. I think it's a very healthy disrespect, actually. I think the other thing I probably learned about local government is that for those of us who were never quite sure what we wanted to do when we grew up, it was an incredibly good place because it's so full of amazingly different stuff. So you'd go from doing sort of water infrastructure to the plans for a new library to a community group or to somebody's idea of something they wanted to get going in the city to just a raft of things all in the same sort of couple of hours. I think the other thing probably is that it is really important to connect with others who can help. The city has got so many groups of people in it. I've just been amazed. Like recently when not so recently, when we set up Imagination Station, which is an idea that's completely stolen from Seattle, which is a sister city. I sort of got the money, got the place, those sorts of things, but there was no way I wanted to run a Lego store in my spare time. But I found a Lego users group. Of course there is. Most of them had PhDs from university. But everywhere you look, there are people who see possibilities, who are doing amazing things. And I think the other thing, if I had to summarize one more thing, it would be to, while you're doing it, it's never going to make you rich. So have fun doing it. There's a lot of really cool community stuff that you'll probably do during and after that you won't get paid for. So you need your own sort of intrinsic motivation and for me, most of that is about having fun and really enjoying it and just seeing the joy in it rather than the drudgery of any of it. That's me. It's your turn, Lianne.
I am here, and I'm only going to put my video on. I'm really crook. I've got COVID, but I didn't want to let anyone down. And actually, I wouldn't let the two of them speak for Christchurch without me at least having a little bit of a say. The wording that we came up with for our vision for Christchurch while I was mayor was Ōtautahi Christchurch is a city of opportunity for all. A place that's open to new ideas, new people, new ways of doing things, a place where literally anything is possible. And actually, I think that framing of Ōtautahi Christchurch today is very much with reference to the work that both Garry and Vicki did in their time as mayor. And we've built one on the other to really see that through. And I think that the earthquake itself gave us an opportunity again to see things in a different way. And we've seen a whole lot of people actually develop great ideas and opportunities here in Ōtautahi simply because they were given the opportunity to do so. And that was that phrase, never let a crisis go to waste. It's an opportunity to do things that you never thought that you'd be able to do before. I heard Brad Norman speaking, I think it was, in the last session, and I agreed with everything that he said. And the thing that I learned after I became mayor is that central government knows nothing about local government, and they do not see the power that actually comes from a collaboration between central government, local government, and the community working in partnership. And it's when you get the strength of everyone working together towards the same goals, you can achieve so much more. And I guess I was most frustrated when I saw both council and central government not willing to give up anything of what they were doing in order to enable communities to actually become masters of their own or mistresses of their own future. And that's exactly what I heard Brad say when it wasn't about Wellington deciding where Whanaora was going to focus its attention. It was coming directly from the community. And it's when the community itself is part of designing the whole process, as well as the measures of success when you're talking about impact as well. I think that's something that Ōtautahi Christchurch can actually achieve. So that's what I learned while I was there. I'm turning my video off because I know that I'm cross-eyed because I'm double-sighted at the moment.
Well, I found it ironic, Lianne, that your right eye's closed and your left eye's open, which is...
You're so caring and compassionate, Garry.
Thanks for caring. This is the second time I've had COVID, and it's awful.
Oh God.
Yes, I guess in every discussion it has its weak link, and I guess this is your opportunity, Lianne. One of the things that I think is the point that Lianne was making about central government politicians or central government is that I found it quite a lot easier just to move around central government and try and encourage other local government people to become involved in what was essentially a plot against central government. And often that worked out quite well. And Lianne, it's ironic, she spent so many years in central government before she realised that local government was where it really happened. But central government has got, they seem to just have a focus on some cities. And if you look at, for instance, transportation planning, they look just, they call it the Golden Triangle of Tauranga, Hamilton, Auckland. And I often found it easier to work with a smaller council and say, you're missing out and we're missing out. We're the second biggest city in New Zealand. Let us join forces together. And that's really important. I don't know how you found that, Lianne and Vicki.
Occasionally, I found central government incredibly helpful. For example,
Stop
when
being
we
so positive.
well, remember I stood under the label, the positive choice, and then you stole it.
That's true.
um, but for example, when we set up the housing trust, that was actually with a lot of help from central government, and just actually working, and actually it was the national government at that stage, and it was Nick Smith, who I wasn't expecting to get on well with, but was actually incredibly helpful, and we did get on well, and so something really good came out of that. But I think one of the
But they
things
did
about
steal the bulk of the money at the end of the day as well and give it to Auckland. So I mean, it was a
yeah,
mixture. I think the
yeah,
message that I think we should be giving though people that are thinking about this is that there is a huge advantage in communities working on a collaborative basis, bringing their councils with them, and then collectively approaching
yes.
central government. And I think that's that I wanted to kind of leave as a bit of a message. On Saturday this weekend, and I missed it because of my crookedness. Well, actually, no, I wasn't. I was up and
Don't think you
running.
call
I
it
was still in
crookedness.
Auckland, but the thing was, I didn't have COVID on Saturday. But anyway, I didn't make it back to the Governor's Bay Jetty opening. But you know, our council sold the community of Governor's Bay the jetty for $1. They are the ones who fundraised. They repaired it. Yes, the council put in a lot of money to contribute towards the cost of it, but the community building activities that generated in itself was the most empowering and I mean, ideal model of community involvement in infrastructure rebuild, you know, and that's what I wanted to see a lot more of. We have other examples, the South Brighton Community Centre, the hub that they developed themselves. All they did was they asked the council to help them buy the building, and then they were away. It took 6 years for them to do it, but you just think how much that effort has paid off in terms of social capital and community building. It's just been fantastic.
I think one of the other things that people may not realise is that the power they have when actually talking to the council. So there's a nice system now, I assume it's still there, that you can just come along and give your idea for 5 minutes at the start of any meeting. And you can do it at the time of any annual plan or anything as well. So quite a number of things actually have arisen out of that. For example, and it's not there now, so people may not remember it, but the Central City Electric Shuttle came from somebody actually suggesting that at a annual plan meeting, and then sort of taking it up and developing it and getting it going. But I think also just recently being back on council when you were there, Lianne, it was really interesting to see how the dynamic of the council would change when even when 30 or 40 school kids, school-age children came in to the council room, or, you know, because you only need 30 or 40 people to fill up the chamber. And it actually has far more power than I think people realise. I don't know that people recognise just how powerful they are in their capacity to influence organisations. And certainly when you get a number of groups together, and there are so many groups in Christchurch, and so many people who see possibilities of doing things, that when they jointly do something to council, it does have quite a major impact. I think it was very interesting to watch that dynamic when a whole lot of people turned up to tell something.
I agree. It was always great when the school kids turned up because they were often slightly better behaved than the rest of the council.
It wasn't me she was talking about.
One of the things I think also as mayor that's really important, and I think Vicki touched on this, is that you often find that somebody you don't expect to get on with, you do, and that's you have to eat a large slice of humble pie at times, but it's and I think it's really important for people to actually see that the getting involved in their local community and standing for council is really important, because important that it's not all the same sort of people around the table, that you have a decent mix of of values and ideas, because the debating chamber is where you actually debate them. One of the things I think as mayor that I found quite difficult was that I was being told by a bureaucracy what I should and shouldn't think. And with a ADHD brain like mine, that didn't work all that well. And so I announced that I was going to sit in the square every Friday and anybody could come and see me. And that worked really well. And people people came along with an idea, and I often encouraged them to do what Vicky's talking about. Come along and tell everybody else. What you've got here is quite precious. And that's something that I think you can always really benefit from.
Yeah. I used to do that every Tuesday. People could just come in and tell whatever they wanted to. So anybody could have however long they wanted, within reason. And it was incredibly good, I think, for people to feel that their ideas were actually listened to, because they are what makes a city so exciting. Like, we are all so different. We've all see quite different possibilities, and the capacity to act on them, if you've got a council and things, is so much greater than if you don't know, or you're new to the city, or any of those things. So I think those sort of ideas, those sort of ways of connecting are really, really important. I think there are many, many others. And I think the other thing that's really important is that most of the people I met, Garry, were actually, you know how you're totally irreverent and disrespectful with authority.
Oh, that's so unfair.
And so am I. But what struck me was that all these people in positions of power, and sort of, you know, people that you would expect to sort of think were really serious about things, were pretty much the same. They were also very funny, really loved a good laugh, and quite often totally irreverent. And quite often the people that you didn't expect to be irreverent were that way. And I think that way, like, if you're having fun doing whatever it is that you're doing, it's not going to feel like work. And I have to say, I don't think it, like, I never regarded it as work. It was always something that was a huge, well, it was a privilege, but it was also a hell of a lot of fun. And I think it has to be that way. I would get told off for laughing too loudly in the office, but goes with the job.
Yeah, one of the things I think was always important as mayor is to actually make sure that an idea happens. And that's often things get buried. Like that community group comes along and says, look, we want to do da 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 da. It's really important that a councillor and the mayor follow through on and get things to happen. And that often somebody coming along with an idea is doing something that the council currently doesn't do or isn't doing properly. And to actually say, hang on a minute, you guys, and that's where a councillor can actually have incredible impact by actually taking that group and having the right people at the council sitting with them and going through and making something happen.
Has Lianne fallen asleep?
No, I haven't fallen asleep, but I'm sick of being mocked by Garry, so I'm not gonna switch my video back on, because I can't help
I
it.
love you dearly.
I have to close one of my eyes, and if I close my left eye, I get dizzy. You're just going to feel, I hope you feel really bad if I've got something seriously wrong with me.
Well, you've got COVID.
I know.
It's not good.
Anyway, we're not generating any questions here, so either we're boring people to death, or we're not doing something right. So
I can't even see where the questions are.
Well, they're down the side, but there's just nothing.
Oh, okay.
Has anyone got any? Has anyone got any? And something to add to this conversation that three wise mayors might be able to help you out with.
It's a big assumption.
All right. Well,
No.
2 then.
Okay.
Oh, look, we've got Brian and Joe. So, Brian?
Yeah, thanks, guys. I wrote the question in the chat.
Oh,
Did you?
So
It'd be good if we could operate this thing.
I can where find it again.
Or you could just tell us.
Yeah, can anyone share their thoughts on why Christchurch isn't trialling citizens' assemblies as is happening elsewhere in the country?
oh, I don't know that it. I didn't know that it was being trialled somewhere else in the country. I think it's a very good idea. There are different styles of citizen assemblies, and there are different types of decisions that are probably more appropriately determined by them or advised by them. You have to make up your mind whether the type of citizenship assembly that you want, and then the type of issues that would be best referred to them. And then the question is that for advice or is that for a decision that is then adopted by the council? So I've taken a significant interest in these, having read a book called Citizens over Christmas last year. And it's a very good there's a very good argument to be had about the opportunity to debate issues where there are no politics, but simply debating the issues with people from interest groups presenting their view, and then people from with expertise in a particular area presenting their view as well, so that you get the cross section of opinion, and then you're able to form the opinion. But all that is done in public, with the opportunity for the public to engage in that process. The example that's used in the book is the abortion law reform in Ireland. And I don't think I, as a child growing up, would have believed for one moment that they would have made that constitutional amendment. But with the use of a citizens' assembly, they were able to bring all of the issues out into the open, take the politics out of it, and basically the holding of the referendum matched the percentage of the citizens that voted for it on the citizens' assembly.
Yeah, there's one in Wellington that's had some publicity, and I spoke to a couple of councillors at Garry's Tuesday Club, and they had advanced it with the city council, but most of the council weren't interested, or the rest of the councillors weren't interested. That's the last I heard. That's why I asked the question. I thought.
My observation, we've got 2 other questions, Brian, but my observation is that our current council is the bureaucracy is very difficult to get information out of. I'm constantly being held up on information requests, and I think the community needs to actually form its own forum, and I think that's quite a possibility. Now we've got Zola.
Thank you. So I was reading the Future of Local Government report that was released not so long ago, and there's so many great things in that report, things like around better engagement that's more meaningful and collaborative. They've got to focus on intergenerational and future well-being, and also about central government giving a lot more money back to local government so that it can actually do these better engagement and collaboration. But somebody said, oh, that might even be neglected by the upcoming elected central government. And so who knows when those things are going to be actioned. So I'm just wondering, it's such a great report. How can we get the things, the recommendations in this report actually manifested, actualized in our local governments?
It's a really good question, because the imbalance in power between local government and central government in New Zealand is huge. And the way in which local government is funded through rates is not going to cut it. It's just not going to work. And so you'll see local government seek to sell off all assets and things as they move along, just because they don't want to have to put up rates in the way that they're going to have to deal with infrastructure, especially for making infrastructure sort of suitable for climate change and for the future. So the imbalance that we have of sort of the local government is the sort of naughty little child in the back room, and then the big important group of government is just wrong. I don't know how many reports there's been on local government that have suggested changes, and I honestly don't know the answer to that, because it's completely dependent on central government, and they very seldom get excited about local government. They sort of see them as and that this might be rude, but sort of groups that they can pass the annoying little details down to, without seeing that actually the future of communities needs to be decided by communities. And in order to do that, like the idea that you pay GST on rates is crazy. My thesis and my pol-sci degree was actually on local government rates a long time ago, at local government finance, and it didn't work then. It's not going to work for the future. It is going to be far more important. I don't know the answer.
It would be useful. Oh, sorry, Garry, I won't interrupt you.
Yes, Garry.
What? Go for it.
Zola, I don't think anything will happen from that report until local communities grab it and turn it into political football, because it was a very sensible report. And my recommendation would be we start in the South Island and we work out what we want down here, because the public service in Wellington will not want those recommendations.
Well, yeah, I have a newsletter called Common Ground, and one of my focus areas is helping councils with engagement, but I also am that link of communication between local communities. So I'm a community organizer, and I help communities. The thing is, I'm not paid to do this work. You know, I'm like doing it, and I only have so much I can work on, for free. So I'm trying my best to organize communities to let them know about the report, what they can advocate for, help them with the languaging so that they can go to their councils and help their councils to advocate, sort of pushing from the grassroots. Yeah, but I have to find some funding to do this work, because, I do a little bit of it because I live somewhere and I want my local council to be responsive. Yeah, so that's my work. I see is also a way to help to bring that together, but we need a lot more of us community organizers doing this.
It's good. Look, I'm going to jump in there and say Jo was actually the next person, so I'm going to go to Jo for her question, because we've got 1 minute left.
Actually, it was all kind of related to this. So I've come out of working in a council, and I think it's very easy in local government to say it's central government, but my experience in local council working in community was inside a council. There's the very traditional infrastructure, roads, water, and this is what the future of local government team was about 3 waters. And the community team, people like myself who are on the ground, see the community, empower them. But there's in councils, there's such a head to head also with councillors. How do we start to change that mindset within councils? It is about community and community outcomes, the social, the art. I do digital, so inclusion is so important. How do we change that mindset in councils to change councils?
I mean,
I totally agree.
Well, that was my point originally, that the barrier sits at central government and local government, that quite often local government will not hand over to the community, but to support it, not to abandon it, to undertake the work on themselves, but actually to support communities doing the work for themselves. That actually builds so much more capacity and so much more ability to build resilience in the face of all of the other challenges that we've got coming. We are not going to be able to tackle climate change, for example, without having the community empowered and essentially capable of resolving some of the adaptation issues ahead of time and making some of the decisions about what that future might look like.
My response, Jo, is get involved.
think we're out of time.
All right, we are.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vicki, Garry, and Lianne. I see Malcolm Sproul has a question as well, and there's some other people been asking questions in the chat. So if any of the three of you are able to just jump into the chat for a couple of minutes, I know that would be much appreciated. Next up, we have a future-focused discussion on Web3 for social architecture in communities, led by Siddharth Saleka and Kamiya Young. Kamiya is actually also in charge of wellbeing for this conference, so thank you for that, Mahi.